On this video, we're going to be looking at some of the reasons why firms choose to grow and some of the pitfalls that they might face if they make that choice. The general reason could be to reduce their costs via what's called economies of scale. Economies of scale is where when a firm grows, it's able to reduce its unit costs, which allows them to either reduce the price, so they're going to get more sales, or they can hold their price constant, so they're going to get higher profit margins. Larger firms can also exploit their monopsony power, which is their buying power over their suppliers. So, for example, Tesco a few years ago arbitrarily decided that they were going to pay their suppliers after 90 days, not 60 days. And there wasn't a lot that the small suppliers could do about it. Also, if they're bigger, they're able to use their monopoly power over their customers, that selling power. So it gives them the greater ability to raise their prices or their profits, get a bigger market share and promote their brands. Decent example of that would be how WH Smiths use their monopoly power inside hospitals. You can see there that in a normal shop, Colgate will cost you £2.49. In their hospital shop, £7.99, because customers basically are patients and they haven't really got a lot of choice. So what are these internal economies of scale? Well, the first one is bulk buying discounts. It's the one that I'd fall back on if I couldn't think of anything else in an answer. So, for example, I work at a college where we have about 150 business students. So when we buy books for them, we are able to get about a 20% discount on those books. Local schools got about 5 or 6 students. They're not able to get those discounts. The bigger the firm, the more technical economies of scale they are likely to benefit from. For example, large supermarkets will have self-service checkouts. They'll typically have automated stock control systems. Large manufacturers will often have robots. Smaller firms simply can't afford this layout. Managerial economies of scale is where large firms can afford specialist managers, for example, specialist buyers, the ones who are able to bully the suppliers best, specialist sellers, IT specialists, HR specialists, specialist lawyers, specialist accountants, specialist tax lawyers, accountants, whose job is to make sure that large firms don't pay large tax bills. Large firms typically engage in more research and development, which means that they're able to innovate more, which should reduce their costs in the future. On the financial markets, typically a large firm is able to borrow more money at lower interest rates than a small firm. Finally, economies of scale that we are going to look at is that they can use mass marketing to hit a whole load of customers in a single advertising campaign. Small firms simply can't do this. Now, those are all internal economies of scale, which benefits the firm as it grows bigger. There are also external economies of scale, where every firm in the industry benefits because the whole industry has got bigger. Frequently, industries stick together geographically, so there are certain parts of the country that specialise in certain industries. For example, Cambridge is Britain's Silicon Valley. Why Cambridge? Because there's a university that has the cleverest people in the country there. And of course, once a few firms start to set up in Cambridge, then other firms are going to be attracted to that area. It's going to be a magnet to attract other firms in. So if you've got an industry dominant in an area, then local colleges and universities will develop courses related to that. So I teach in London, and a lot of our FE colleges will have specialist banking courses, and that obviously means that there's going to be a pool of local experienced labour, which makes recruiting labour easier. Local firms may also cooperate with each other. For example, there could be network groups where they swap ideas or engage in joint projects. And local ancillary service might develop to support the industry. For example, on that map, you can see the main car seat manufacturers in the UK. You'll see a lot of them are dotted around Liverpool, where there is a large car plant, and also particularly around the West Midlands, around Birmingham way, because that's where the JLR plant is. So all of the car manufacturers will be able to benefit from those local services. You might also have local financial providers. Say in Cornwall, there's going to be banks that are used to dealing with farms, or local waste management systems. Well, that's all fantastic, but there are of course problems associated with growth, and a lot of the problems are related to diseconomies of scale, which is where unit costs rise beyond a certain point as output grows. There are 3 C's associated with diseconomies of scale, and the first one is communication. Large firms find it difficult to communicate internally. For example, they might be a firm with a flat structure with a very wide span of control. For example, there's a call center organization shown on the left there where the span of control is 34. That means that one manager has to control 34 workers, and unless they are incredibly good, they're going to find it really difficult to keep on top of those 34 people's work. Or alternatively, they could have a longer chain of command if you have a tall structure. Well, with a tall structure, it means that the people at the top are very far away from the customers at the bottom. And so there's a danger of miscommunication and misunderstanding. And of course, if you've got more managers primarily dealing with each other, that means you've got fewer relatively workers actually dealing with the customers. So you've got a bureaucracy that is likely to build up, and it means that you are likely to be dependent on communications technology. You could well have the danger of Chinese whispers, where as information from the market filters up from the bottom, it becomes distorted by the time it hits the top, or decisions made at the top become distorted by the time they hit the bottom. There's another nice little cartoon there on the bottom right that shows this. The other 2 C's are communication and control, particularly if a firm operates in multiple locations or has multiple products or multiple functions, or if it does a whole range of different things. It becomes a lot more difficult to coordinate what is going on. So for example, on the top left, you've got a map of Ford operations in Europe. So you've got obviously things like language difficulties, and to a certain extent with those manufacturing plants in Eastern Europe, you're going to have things like time zone differences. The problem gets even worse where you are communicating worldwide. On the right hand side, we have Ford's world production situation, where you're looking at massive time zone or language or cultural differences between different parts of the world. In large firms, workers are often alienated. They're generally not known by the senior managers. They don't get personal recognition for their achievements or their problems or their situation, and you could well become demotivated. So if I was going to do an answer on this area, I think I'd be looking at some of the reasons why firms might grow in context. So I'd be looking at specific economies of scale that they might benefit from. Again, in context, on my second paragraph, I'd be looking at some of the problems associated with that and why they might accidentally face diseconomies of scale. Whereas if you grow, you are likely to want economies of scale. You might accidentally dip into diseconomies of scale if you grow too quickly. And my final paragraph, the one that actually moves me up into level 3 or 4, is where I'd be writing about how they might be able to deal with some of the potential diseconomies to actually solve the problem that growth might give you. The final diseconomy of scale is overtrading, where if a firm grows too quickly, it runs into liquidity problems. I'm going to be dealing with that on a separate video. That's all really I want to say about growth.